WNST Wednesday night in Tampa at the Amalie Arena. But I shall be there, rocking my red, although the blue coat was the lucky coat on Monday night. Ed Frankovic was rolling shotgun down at what I call the phone booth down in D.C. for an electric evening of a Game 6. Ed, first things first, tell everybody about your children and how much they love the Capitals, and when you wake up on a Tuesday morning and can tell your son that the Caps won instead of lost. That's a good feeling for you because you're a hockey family, man.
Yeah, my 8-year-old, he was born in 2010, right in the midst of that 14-game winning streak, and I would position him in his little chair when he was a baby in front of the TV. So he's been watching Caps games since he was born, and he is a diehard Caps fan, and he was pretty pumped up on Tuesday morning as the Capitals won. And my daughter, as I walked down, her arm went in the air while she was eating breakfast, pumping her fist. The TJ Oshie performance was unbelievable. The whole team, the building was electric, as you said. I think that was the most energy consistently for a Capitals game I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's a hearty type, right? Like, my wife's been under the weather. I've obviously gotten whatever she's got. I'm headed off to Tampa, hopefully headed off to Las Vegas this weekend as well. And you get down to the building, and I got there early, and there wasn't a lot of energy early. Matter of fact, I was yawning on the ride down, and I went and got myself a stiff cup of coffee, as you saw, right around 6:40. And I circled the building, and there weren't a lot of people there at that point. And I took a little selfie, and I said, these are the hardcores. The ticket prices slid, right? Tickets were $195 for Game 3.
Wow.
For Game 6, you could have gotten in for $60. So early on. The ticket prices were very depressed. No one wants to get in their car, get in the subway, drive down there, park down there, do it all, pay to go, to watch them get eliminated in Game 6. They could not win the series. They could only lose it, which really speaks volumes to the type of fan you will get at a Game 6. You get literally a diehard, someone who's going to the game knowing they could die tonight. They can't really win. They can only move, they can only force Game 7. And a lot of folks bail on that. A lot of folks say, if they're going to lose, I don't want to be there, right? And
yeah.
I think for the people that do show up, there's something about that. And there was something about the crowd that will always be memorable, because even if they play Games 3 and 4 there and Game 6 there next week, I think it'll be different than the kind of crowd we had there, which was I'm all in. Yeah, they might lose tonight, but I'm coming down. I'm plunking my money down. I'm putting my red jersey on. And I was thinking the same thing as I was parking my car going into D.C. Hey, this might be the last time I do this year. This might be the last time we do this with Coach Trotz, right? And I haven't given a whole lot of thought as to what the breakup of the band would look like if they lose Game 7. And I quite frankly didn't think a whole lot about them losing Game 6. They looked like the type of team that wants to win a Stanley Cup on Monday night.
Yeah, as I blogged that at WNST.net, I hope everybody goes and reads it. I was quoting song lyrics from the U2 song Desire, because the Capitals' desire, or the hunger, as TJ Oshie called it afterwards in his postgame press conferences, was there. They were winning the battles. They were winning the board battles. They were, even when Tampa had the power play, Tom Wilson and Jay Beagle were just wrecking crews out there and taking guys off the puck. There was no denying that team on Monday night. They wanted it. They played like, this is something they've been waiting for a long time. And Coach Trotz afterwards did compliment the fans. He said there was no apprehension in the building. And you and I have been in there, and we felt that anxiety, that ultimate feeling of, if Tampa scores, it's going to be a letdown. That building didn't have that feel on Monday night.
Well, I know one night you and me and Jackman, we had a limo. We went to enter for Game 7 of the Flyers. We had trepidation walking into the car. I mean, there's trepidation of they're not good enough. They don't have good enough defense. There's no thought that they're not good enough. They just need to be good enough tonight. They need to be good enough for one night, because they have all that they need to win a championship. There's no doubt about that. Now, whether they will or not, that's why we're going to watch the game on Wednesday night. But there's no thought that they can't win, right?
No, there's no. All three of these teams, and as I said, as we got to the second round, there were 8 teams left. Any of those teams could win the Stanley Cup. They're all good enough. That's the way the NHL is now. It's a lot like the NFL with a lot of parity.
Or Major League Baseball. Once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And Game 7, and the stats are already out there. The negative Nellies are going to be out there preaching the Capitals' history. And that's what I loved about it. The Capitals have the all-time worst Game 7 record, and the Lightning have the all-time best. But I'm going to caveat it with one thing. Most of those Game 7 losses by the Capitals have been on their home ice. This time they're going on the road. This time, as I wrote at WNST.net, they're just going to fly in and play a hockey game. They don't have all their buddies and their family calling them, asking for Game 7 tickets. They don't have any distractions. They just have to get on a plane on Tuesday, fly to Tampa, and focus on playing a hockey game where Tampa's going to have all the pressure on them. They were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're the team that's supposed to get back there, 113 points, best record in the East. They've got their home fans there. The pressure's on Tampa. The Capitals had the pressure in Game 6 because they had lost 3 in a row. Tampa felt like they had the momentum, and the Capitals had the will over the skill, which is what they needed. They had to win those battles because Tampa had been winning them in the previous 3 games, and the Capitals looked like a different team on Monday night. There is no momentum in hockey. This next game's a coin flip, and the Capitals, again, are going on the road, and anything can happen, as you said.
All right, things to like about the way they're playing. Obviously, Braden Holtby, who wasn't good enough to get on the ice in Game 1 5 weeks ago against Columbus, now front and center, pitching a shutout for the first time in a year. And for that alone, to have a goalie playing well going into this, I'll take that. I'll take the enthusiasm and the energy down in Tampa and the playing the role of the bad guy. And, that somebody's going to be shaking hands with somebody feeling bad about themselves on Wednesday night. The Caps know that road. But from where they are with Ovechkin, with Oshie, with Holtby playing well, defensively, I thought they were outstanding as a unit on Monday night. Now, that being said, and I talked to Ted Starkey about this, and I know we enjoyed the game together, as a group. Kuznetsov looks soft. Backstrom doesn't look healthy to me. Burakovsky looks like a disappearing act, and he doesn't look right to me as well. So, and I noticed even in the postgame, Ken Saber and some other guys say nobody's out there, nobody's healthy right now. I think you and I have had some concerns about Oshie, quite frankly, over the last month. It was nice to see him wake up. But Ovechkin and Holtby, that's the way this is supposed to be. Your best player and your goalie should be firing on all cylinders if you're trying to make it to a Stanley Cup final. And Tom Wilson was running around like a wrecking ball on Monday night, and I think everyone's afraid to be the one that goes to the sin bin here, right? Like everyone's afraid of getting on the penalty kill. So there is a level of measuredness that you're trying to play with as to not be the guy who gets the stupid penalty that opens up the can of worms that is, quite frankly, either one of these teams' power plays a can of worms.
Yeah, and Beagle took a penalty early in period 2, and the Capitals had an amazing kill. They only gave up 1 power play shot against a power play that has really, really damaged them in this series. And the advantage is, and Starkey always points this out, as I know you're going to have him on the radio, but as the series gets later, they tend to call fewer and fewer penalties. The Capitals only had 1 power play. They converted on it, and Tampa had 2. And it was Braden Coburn who took a hooking penalty on Devontae Smith penalty, who played a heck of a game, 5 hits, the big second goal, and then he drew the penalty to get the first goal. That going to the net hard and drawing a penalty was so important because that first goal in Game 6 is so important because both of these teams, when they get a lead, are very good at clogging the neutral zone and walling off the front of their net. And that's what the Capitals did once they got a lead, and then they played for the odd man rushes, and ultimately Tampa had to pinch down, and they caught them. So that first goal, or that lead, if you will, in the first period or into the second period is going to be so important in Game 7. It's been that way the whole series. And to have Holtby get his first shutout of the season in the most important game of the season speaks volumes to his play as well as the team. The effort was unbelievable. I don't think Tampa got hardly any rebounds, if at all, chances in front. Most of the shots came from the perimeter. It was easily the best defensive game I've seen them play all playoffs.
I think we go back now to acquisitions and where we are, and I love that George McPhee complimented the Caps and said they've had great drafts the last 10 years. Well, he was a part of eight and a half of them, so it's easy to say that as you're sitting out there. We're waiting on Fleury, and look, there'll be time, like Kenny Rogers said, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done here. We'll worry about Nate Schmidt, we'll worry about Fleury and all those guys when we get there, but TJ Oshie as an acquisition for this franchise, and then a guy that they spent a lot of money on, and there's some question about whether he would play to that level of value. I don't think there's any doubt he's the kind of guy you want on your team, and that would be said for Orpik and Niskanen and Carlson and the guys that they've chosen to bring in. I mean, Ovechkin kind of came off the boat. I mean, they have him. If he's motivated, they can win. If he's fat and drinking and young and stupid, they're not going to win, and they didn't win. That's not the case right now. Boy, this is a professional bunch, right? And Backstrom playing through this injury, and Burakovsky, same thing. But Oshie to have his night in the sun in Game 6 at home and to be ascending and coming on at this period after, let's be honest, he had a pretty significant head injury in the middle of the season that never really seemed to make him look like TJ Oshie.
Yeah, that injury was big. He had a great start to the season after getting the big contract. All last season, my motto was pay the man because I just love the way he plays. He dogs every puck. He hustles more than any guy. He and Jay Beagle, they're just relentless, and Tom Wilson fits that mold as well. Those are the type of guys you need if you're going to win championships. And like you said, I wasn't happy with Kuznetsov. I thought he was very soft. He was 1-11 on faceoffs. Did not have a good first period at all. And he just doesn't do well against physical players. And Trotzy did a great job getting him away from that Callahan line because that line has had his lunch in this postseason. But the thing I liked about what Trotz said after the game was going into Game 7, he says, I can't think of any other team that I've coached, and he goes, and I've been doing this a long time, that I would want to take into Game 7. There is clearly something different about this team. Whether they win or they lose, this team has definitely been different than all other Caps teams in the way they've overcome a lot of adversity, a lot of negative press. They weren't even supposed to make the playoffs, despite you and I knew they would, and still said they had a top team. You could go out July 2nd, 2017, and read my blog proclaiming that they were still a good team, despite all the panic around this area and with the national media. But the way they've played together, overcome the injuries, like you said, Oshie was not himself for 3 or 4 months. He seems to be playing his best hockey right now. It's just a lot. Holtby struggled. He had to deal with the injury last year and being overweight and having to change his training regimen. We're dealing with the Backstrom injury. He's finally starting to look better. Tom Wilson had to deal with a 3-game suspension in the middle of the Pittsburgh series. You can go on and on and on about the things they've had to overcome. And here we are, one game from going to play Vegas in the Stanley Cup final, with someone will look at it and say on paper, this is not their best roster, but it is. The game isn't played on paper. It's played on the ice, and there's a lot of heart on this team, a lot of commitment to each other, and they're going to need one more huge game to get by a very, very good Tampa team.
Ed Frankovic is our guest. You can find him at Ed Frankovic on Twitter as well as anywhere WNST's hockey coverage goes. And he is our historian and insider and has been my chemo-sabi for Game 7s. I'm going to be solo, in a foreign land and in a rink of white and blue. And the AC/DC cranking up and the Thunderstruck and all that stuff. There's something about this being on the road, and I know I did this a couple of years ago up in New York with the Rangers as well. There's something about the road that is sort of calming and soothing, I think, for this group. And most teams you'd say, well, they're going on the road, this is going to be tough, and I don't think it's going to be easy. But there's something about it being on the road that I almost prefer this time around. This team's played better on the road. Yeah,
and that Game 7 you went to where they lost in 2 overtimes. They were really the inferior team to a Rangers team that was the President's Trophy winners, and they took them to 2 overtime. Again, Lundqvist is the difference there. They've played better on the road, I think, in some of these Game 7s. And, they won in Boston in 2012, and Holtby was a first year in the league in net, and they lost a tough one to the Rangers again. And I think it was in the next round with Hunt as the coach, Dale Hunter as the coach, 2-1 Game 7. They really did not have a very good team then. This is a toss-up between these two teams. You got a Holtby, you've got against Vasilevsky, who's playing well in net. This is going to be one of those games where the bounces are probably going to make a difference. You're just going to have to give maximum effort. But you talked about Amalie Arena, Ness, and that it's not loud. And Holtby mentioned after the game, he said they asked him about the crowd, when they're cheering his name, if that helps him. And Holt said, basically, I don't hear that. I just lock in. He says, actually, I'm better when it's quieter. He says, I just lock into my zone and focus on what I have to do. And the Capitals have a chance to go in there and make that Tampa building quiet and apprehensive and take advantage of it.
All right, and no predictions. The only prediction is that I hope we're watching hockey on Monday. It's a cautious optimism that you're familiar with that has been my refrain here for the last month because I do know they're good enough, and I know, and I even said this to my wife when I woke up on Tuesday morning. I'm like, and I don't want to be even semi-defeatist, but this has been fun. I mean, I hope it continues. I want it for Trotz. I want it for the organization. I want it for you and for Christian and for all little Caps fans out there, as well as for my own selfish reasons and going to Vegas next week and trying to have a little bit of fun. Only going to be 108 out there next week, but I'm sure the ice will be quite slippery and chilly inside, and I know they're all lubed up out there as well. So we will get to it Wednesday night. All eyes on the Caps and the Lightning. I will be at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida for an 8 o'clock face-off. And Ed, I'll be following you. You'll be following me, and hopefully we'll be following the Caps out to Las Vegas and Sin City for some fun. That would... Above all the places the Caps to go in a Stanley Cup final, Las Vegas would not have been a thought about that, right? For all these years to say when they finally win a cup, maybe they do it in Vegas.
It's just amazing, isn't it, Ness, that, the first-tier expansion team is there, and the Capitals have a chance to go play their former GM, and this expansion team, Cody Eakin and Nate Schmidt are on that team, and it's, what, we'll deal with that. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. They got to go in there and find a way to beat Nikita Kucherov, who every time he touches the puck, you and I are nervous because that guy's the hell of a player. And you got Steven Stamkos. Vasilevsky is just, we talk about his size and net. This is going to be a major chore to go down to Tampa and defeat them. The Bolts will be the favorites. But I'll take my chances. Let's see a 2012 Raven type playoff victory.
All right, he is Ed Frankovic out on Twitter. He is Ed at WNST.net. He has inked a blog at WNST.net off of Game 6 and a preview of Game 7. I will be down in Tampa for all full coverage at WNST.net. Luke is monitoring all things Orioles and the White Sox, and, of course, getting ready for the Joe Flacco Words of Wisdom on Lamar Jackson for Thursday out at the Castle. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're downloading the Rofo app and using that when you're pumping your gas. You'll get your fried chicken and your Western fries free of charge. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and, of course, streaming live anytime, anywhere on Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.